We will proceed now to have our conversation following the same format as we did in the previous panel. We will have, again, a representative of the editorial media discourse, and then a representative of the academic part. So please, Florencia Rodriguez. Florencia Rodriguez is an Argentinian critic and curator of architecture, director of the magazine Plot and Lots of Architecture, upcoming magazine. She's a Loeb Fellow from the Harvard Graduate School of Design. And with Florencia, we will have also Alfredo Hidalgo. Alfredo Hidalgo is a Mexican architect and holds a PhD from the University of Oviedo in Spain. He's Associate Dean of Research and Postgraduate Studies at the Escuela Nacional de Arquitectura, Arte y Diseño, TEC de Monterrey. We will proceed with this conversation. So welcoming and joining our panel. Okay. So thank you so much. I think that as the afternoon has been moving, the question expands. It becomes, I'm more inquired and intrigued each time of this kind of metropolitan precedent that seems to keep reappearing. There's 500 years of urbanization history, not only on top of lava fields, but also of a lake that has generated in a way a precedent in which there's been different modes and cultural ways of inhabiting or urbanizing. That leads me to this idea of how, what we've been discussing earlier today, this idea of landscape as medium of intervention for urban form, for urban transformation, that expands in a way the palette of not only materiality, techniques, or modes of intervening the ground itself, and expanding that palette for urban design and urbanism, but also as a media strategy to disseminate and bring another audience into the conversation, be it public officials, children. We've seen a lot of different conversations today around those topics. So I think that my first question to you would be, or let's say the vocation I want to put on the table is, how do you feel that precedent, that historic legacy, not only geological but cultural, of inhabiting a valley for over 500 years, and these constant processes of urbanization that are transforming the landscape constantly, are in a way could inform the new way of the urban form of cities like Mexico and other metropolitan regions around the world that are doing similar infrastructures of modernity, and in a way asking for strategies to dismantle them.
Okay, well, thank you, first of all, again, for the invitation. And I think trying to respond to what you have just said and trying to summarize in a way certain ideas of what we have been listening to and watching today, I would like to say something that we were talking about yesterday, that is that in this moment of time we need to re-signify the vocabulary that we are using. So we are using the same words, but we are saying other things, no? And we have been listening many times today to something that it's really interesting, and words as territory or design advocacy, or alternative futures, ecology and sustainability, placemaking, this idea of generating conditions for things to happen. And I think I would like to make a difference here, because I don't think that nothing about this is about going back to the origins of something. It's more like proposing a critical way of thinking about what has been done and proposing things. So I would say that we have listened today to this idea that we are much more people right now in the world, and we all know about that. So the problematics are others, technology is different. The post-industrial city confronts us to a different reality. There are lots of needs that we have been also mentioning today. So I like this idea of trying to not think about the origins, but more about a new mode of thought about the city, and also a redefinition of what makes a city today. You know? In that way, I think I would like to use this word intervention that you mentioned in another way. I feel that this is more like a family intervention, a disciplinary intervention on what architecture and urban planning means. So we should try to think in those terms. Landscape as urbanism is pointing out that there are certain things that architectures seem to have torn apart in a way, and this is quite a call, no? So it's like an urge to redefine certain things. And going back to your provocation, and also because of my work as an editor and a curator, and now also trying to consult with the government, I like that idea that Adriana was very strong about, trying to make relations with the people that are taking the decisions, and also to feel that as designers and as people that are thinking about our environment, we have to do things to make things change, no? So I try to think usually how to work with all of these in Latin America, particularly. The magazine that I do is in Spanish, so it's devoted to a Spanish-speaking audience, and we try to understand the value of what is going on in different parts of the world, but also to promote Latin American architecture. And there is this thing that happens with words and translations also. It's like there is very difficult to think of this idea of landscape in the same way, because in English we have been listening for years to soundscapes, cityscapes, datascapes, and lots of comparisons, and this idea of something that is consolidating lots of strata of multiplicity of and complexity, but at the same time doesn't lose the singularity of each of these commitments that this discipline takes. It's really hard to translate, but I think it's our work to put that into the conversation and into the disciplinary agenda, and also going back in a way. If we are going back to something, it's not origins, it's policies, and getting involved in decision making of the city.
Thank you too for the invitation. And well, I want to continue the idea that Florencia was talking about what happened with the landscape, because me too, I have hearing about a lot of ideas about what that landscape as urbanism means. No, Charles Walkin was talking about that 2 decades before. You have been talking about that landscape as urbanism can be a possibility to understand the complex city. Right now we can say that if landscape as urbanism is idea for this century, or social participation can be as an urbanism too, or public policy, social ecology, economy of the quality, for example, or placemaking as urbanism, or healthy places maybe can be a part of the new way of urbanism. Well, I have more questions than answers right now after the presentation. But there are other very powerful ideas talking about that what's happened with the territory, and what is the way that we can work in the territory, about if a landscape is an structure, or how to understand the distance between the planning and the implementation, for example. No? About the origins, maybe right now we have forget some ideas about that origins for the city in our countries, and the landscape as idea to understand the relation between the city and the rural items. But today I think that we need to ask to question about what happened with the city, and which can be the discipline that can help us to understand the problem, not only for ornamental ideas, the landscape, about a specific thing for a method to have a link between the build, the constructions, more the idea about how we can start, for example, the picture from Rosanna when we can see a lot of houses, the color houses, is the really way, the real landscape that we have in our city right now, how we can work with them.
I think that the question of language is quite interesting because it brings to the table, in a way, what I was suggesting, that it expands, right? This idea of landscape as urbanism, as a critique of the modes of operation of urbanism. In a way, what it's doing, it's expanding its vocabulary to other stuff, right? Live and human and non-human agents and others. And what becomes interesting then is the translation also, not only of a specific discourse, but of those media that we find on the ground into either public policy or public awareness. There's so many different strategies. Something that becomes particular of the presentations that we saw today is the scale of intervention. While some address the more direct, on a tradition, for example, as landscapes as playgrounds, landscapes as pedagogical devices. We also see the transformation, for example, of the materiality of the ground for terms of maintenance, in the case of Rosanna, and the uncovering of this kind of geological permeability that Entorno was addressing, that then relates to the subduction, land subsidence that is so dramatically seen here in Mexico City, Jakarta, Tokyo, and other cities that have covered, right, their ground. So in a way, I think that an interesting question, maybe also for the designers that we're speaking today, and is how do we do that translation of those mediums of work, that new palette? Because I think that if we fall into translating a specific theory, we will find our own limits in that direct translation. But it's the generation of a new language supported by some ideas.
Well, there is always this difficulty of translating, but at the same time, I think that was something that was missing today until this moment. That is, we didn't mention technology a lot. No? And how is it possible to think today about urbanism or landscape as urbanism, or any way of thinking about the way we inhabit this world without talking about technology? So we are using technology in many ways. We can measure things, we can understand more about specific sites, and there are lots of uses of technology that were shown here, but also as a medium for translation in a way, or for communication, or for building communities that are not just about the people that is living in a place, but to understand that there is this other common ground that can be shared and lived with. And I believe that also the people that are working in scenarios as the academia or publications as myself or exhibitions or else should also help in this translation, but very actively. I really believe in this idea of cultural agitation, or trying to propose things and translate that. It was interesting today to hear this idea of trying not to talk in difficult or niche words, but trying to talk in ways that the audience and the usual public could really embrace and approach and understand. Because when you try to show some of these projects to somebody that is not an architect, for sure will understand what you are talking about. It's like how we live. And that is something that can be pushed forward.
I mean, my response to that would be that I find it fascinating to bring the question of technology. I think that Iñaki touched something interesting with this idea of the geocultural, that in a way I think in terms of language also expands our understanding of technology not only to human construction, we could see landscape as technology itself, and the techniques that we've been speaking about implementing the performative aspect of ecologic mediums could perhaps reshape our understanding of technology as well, and maybe expand our way of addressing, I don't know, the landscape medium as a technological device in itself.
Something very simple, but you mentioned this idea of the human and non-human, Latour's idea, and I think, when are we going to incorporate ourselves to the idea of ecology and ecosystem, and probably understand that these things that we have done in these 5 centuries of history, these infrastructures, I think, are maybe, like, you cannot separate that from nature in a way. It's like, so how do we manage to readapt in a way to the way we understand the set of tools and the set of mind tools that we need to get to generate new possible futures or alternative futures?
Final remarks, Alfredo.
No, I was thinking about that. Really, in the 5 centuries of history that you said, we have been close from that technology all the time. We have different kinds of technology. The technology has not to be the main idea about that we can talk about our problems, our discipline. Talking about the words and the translate, I think that we have not talking a lot about that. What happened with the program, for example, how we can understand the relation between the social necessity with the project, the program, thinking about the new methods to the governance, for example, has to be a new media to develop the not only the project, to develop the idea of a city. Really, I think that the systematic analysis about that what happened with the city is a method to use the technology, but it can be a possibility to understand the relationship between the information that we have right now, that is a lot of information, can be used to have a better ideas about what we are developing right now, and take a decision about what can be the kind of urbanism that we need.
Fantastic. I think that on that idea of like an urbanism that calls for a reappropriation of the existing conditions, to rethink them, to reinvent the way that we address with them, I think it's a good way of proceeding to our final keynote of the afternoon. Thank you so much.